Thanks to everyone for coming along to today's webinar. My name is Peter Hooper. I'm the New Zealand Country Manager for JobAdder, and I'm really excited about being your host today. I think the reason why they've chosen me is if you ever look at my haircut, I've got no hair, and the hairs that are left are actually all grey, and that is predominantly from the mistakes I made as an agency owner from running a contract book. So just to reiterate what today is all about, this webinar is really aimed at agency owners, founders, or soon-to-be founders who really want an insight into what's required on how to run a contract book and some of the things you need to consider now that you're moving from being a consultant to being an actual business owner. So I'm joined today by Encore CEO Damien Bridge. Between us, I think we've been lucky to work with hundreds of different agencies in Australia and New Zealand. G'day, Damo.
Hi, mate, and thank you for chairing and hosting. It's great to be here. I think one of the things that at the moment it kind of reminds me a little bit of pre-GFC, the time we're in. So, you know, things are just happening so fast. Looking on Seek the other day, job vacancies are going through the roof in the sectors that our people are working in, and you know, who knows what the next 12 months looks like. So, rapt to have Kimberly, Michael, and Ryan here to talk about it. I think, you know, it's just so relevant and contemporary. I started in the industry 30 years ago, so much has changed. So it's great to have people that are actually living in it today with us.
Totally agree,
and
mate.
I'm the same, mate. I've got a lot of grace. So
whatever. Hey, yeah. So look, today's topics, we're going to be covering the majors. So really, the key difference between managing your contract book versus your perm. We're going to look at, I guess, the key learnings that you can apply to your startup, your agency, to really grow 2021 and beyond. We're going to be having a little bit of a look at some of your general business elements. So how do you actually win clients and keep them coming back for more? And then also how do you actually bring it all together? So we're talking about this word tech stack. Some of you guys won't be familiar with it, but really what tools and vendors can you sort of string together so that you can scale your contracting business and agency? And when we say scale, we're also talking about reducing your compliance risk and all those sorts of things. So I'm going to introduce you now to our panelists. So first of all, our speakers, Ryan Lynch and Michael Boyd, both directors at Iterate. Iterate's one of the faster growing agencies in the space out of Melbourne. And also Kimberly Britt, who's the sole owner and founder of Ardor People. And she's focused on growing in the business transformation sector. So welcome, guys. Do you guys want to give us a quick spiel about yourselves? And Kimberly, we can start with you.
Sure. I'm Kimberly. I started my business, Ardor People, almost 3 years ago to the day, actually. I started my recruitment career in 2007 in the UK, so had a real baptism of fire over there. I started in contracting recruitment. I moved back to Melbourne in 2012 and helped to build a successful contract business for somebody else. Then I became a managing director of a large contract business. We had over 200 contractors under management before going out on my own 3 years ago.
Cool. All right. And Ryan and Michael?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Michael. That makes you Ryan, but thanks for having us, Pete and Damien. I started around about the same time, a little bit later than you, Kim. I started in recruitment 2009. Always been in Melbourne and always been in IT, so sort of highly specialised in a particular market, which is still, I guess, Iterate's sort of core brand at the moment. Again, with IT being its core offering. Worked at bigger agencies, worked for the Greythorn Experis for a number of years, where I met Ryan, and we launched Iterate. We're coming up 2 years in May.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah, so from that, Ryan Lynch, similar story, to be honest. I started a few years earlier in 2006, so came up to 15 years in recruitment, working with Greythorn for most of those years as a principal consultant, managing a perm and contract desk there. And as Michael said, worked with him probably the last 6-7 years there at Greythorn together before we left, resigned on the same day and started up Iterate just under 2 years ago.
Oh, great, awesome. All right, now just before we get into the nitty gritty, just a reminder, guys, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. But if we don't, we absolutely promise we will get back to each of you individually with some answers throughout the end of the session, or maybe later on afterwards. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is really the difference between managing a contract book versus perm. And as we sort of discussed, it's kind of like how you're moving now from being a consultant to actually being a business owner. So I guess for all of you on the panel, you've all come from a fairly large agency background, before going out on your own. So what inspired you to start your own agency, and was starting the contract book part of that decision right from the start? Kimberly.
Sure. Well, for me, I mean, it's always difficult leaving a comfortable salary to go out and do your own thing. So I sort of felt that I'd gotten to a point in my career where I'd learnt a lot, and I'd done a lot in the contract recruitment space, and I felt that I was confident enough and comfortable to go out on my own. Because my career had always been in contract recruitment, for me, it was a no-brainer to just continue doing what I've always done. But I think the beauty of running a contract desk and a contract recruitment business is that you can build a passive income for yourself and for your business whilst you continue to grow on that. It doesn't hinder you from continuing to do permanent recruitment, which I've always done as well. But once you get your contract book up and running, you have that passive income coming in. I also enjoy the more high touch components that you have in a contract business, in that, I treat my contractors like they're my employees, and I make them feel like they're part of something. I also speak to my clients regularly, who my contractors report to, and I really, feel like I'm a part of the projects that they're involved in. The nature of my business is corporate transformation, so generally companies that I'm working with are moving from a current state to a future state, and generally they need specific skills to get from A to B. So contracting kind of lends itself to that industry that I'm in. And so I put contractors into those businesses, and they work alongside BAU staff to deliver an outcome, basically. So yeah, that's me basically.
Great. Okay. And how about you, lads?
To jump in, I guess the initial question being what inspired us to start our own agency. To that end, I think my first job, I was mowing people's lawns in the neighbourhood when I was 13 years old. I kind of always had that, entrepreneurial flair, I guess, to work, and I'd always kind of wanted to go into business, for myself, and felt that after sort of 10 years really working for others, that the timing was right to take that step after I'd met Ryan and had a trusted business partner. So and to the second part, in terms of having a contract book, most of the work that I've done with Greythorn, I think, was probably a bit of an opposite split to Ryan. I think probably about 75% of my revenue largely come from contracts, running the contract book, 25% sort of perm. But as sort of Kim mentioned, it's building a passive income and having that sort of recurring revenue, not starting from absolute scratch kind of every month and every quarter. And a similar story to Kim, in that a lot of our work is software engineering focused and tech focused, and it's very much project to project. So you end up building relationships with software engineers that you'll place 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times kind of over their careers.
Yeah, I think following up from that, from what Michael said, our previous agent was a little bit more old-fashioned, that you're either sort of permanent or contract recruitment. But thankfully, I guess in the latter years, you're able to work across both desks. So from my perspective, of coming from perm into contract, I saw the value of having a good contractor book. But yeah, in terms of starting your own agency, it was something that I think we discussed over a few boozy lunches over the years, and it's something that really evolved over time. And I was 13 years strong at that previous agency, so it took me a while to sort of come around. And I don't know how you've done it, Kim, going solo, but being able to have a business partner and someone to start the journey with was invaluable, and bouncing ideas off and sharing the load was helped us make that big sort of first step, starting Iterate.
Yeah, that's great feedback. That's interesting, because all three of you basically said, right, we're going to go start this agency, and contracting was always part of it. But a lot of new agency owners, they generally sort of shy away from temp and contracting just because there is some complexity there. So I guess what sort of practical steps do you guys take start on the right foot? You know, and how do you know you're doing the right thing? Kim, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, sure. Look, the compliance component of contract recruitment can be an absolute minefield, and it's really important to have at least, you know, an understanding of what's involved with that. Obviously, it's important to have good partners. So, you know, I use Encore, who help with my payroll compliance, but it helped me to really understand what good looked like when I was choosing my compliance partner. And Encore have been great for me. Not that this is a plug about Encore, but it means also that I can focus on what I deem to be my skills, which is going out and, you know, selling and building relationships and building my business. Yeah, that component. Look, and I think it's just so important to make sure that you have good accounting advice, good legal advice, get a good bookkeeper. All of those things are so important with a contract business.
Yeah, that was our first sort of month, wasn't it, really? And just getting set up. I think the first meetings that we had were with lawyers and with the accountants and with payroll and just
companies.
Just getting the structures in place.
I think also a key thing was just talking to other business owners who'd followed a similar path. So we're not the first people to set up a tech recruitment company. So we were speaking to people that we know and friends and former colleagues that had started their own agencies, and what were the key things they did? What advice did they seek? What does a contractor book look like? What's the compliance and regulations we need to form around it? So we found those conversations really, really helpful in getting kick-started.
Yeah, great. Hey, and just to expand on these points, guys, when you were going out looking for those vendors like accountants, bookkeepers, lawyers, that sort of thing, were you specifically looking for people with experience from, with working with recruitment contracting books?
Yeah, we spoke to two, and we ended up going with the one that had previous experience in recruitment, sort of young recruitment businesses. So we spoke to only a couple.
For our accountant.
Yeah.
And similarly with payrolling companies, and you're looking at what we can offer, the service offering, fees, etc. All those things play into it.
Yeah. And because of, as Kim mentioned before, with compliance being a minefield, expertise is pretty important, right? So it's well worth shopping around for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess when you talk about some of the key learners you can apply to a startup today, there's some pretty ugly stats out there. I think it's like 50% of small businesses fail in the first year, and then another 80% of the ones that survive fail in the second year. What sort of issues did you guys face in your first couple of years?
I think for me, I guess for starting any new business requires a lot of hard work, dedication, perseverance, all of those things. So I was 100% committed to making sure that I made this business a success. I set goals for myself at the start, and I didn't care what I had to do to meet those goals. I worked evenings, I worked weekends, I worked really hard to make sure that I got to where I thought I needed to be after my first 12 months and then my second 12 months and those sorts of things. I mean, obviously along the way you make mistakes, but it's really important that you learn from those mistakes and make sure that you adapt your business as quickly as you possibly can to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes again. So I think it's been a real challenge to get it up and running, but once you sort of get into the groove of it and things are running, then you can kind of take the foot off the pedal a little bit and start to reap the benefits.
Yeah, I agree. I think getting those foundations in place are really critical. Like Kim said, one of the obvious challenges we face, and we're still in our first 2 years of existence, but was just an obvious one in terms of the trading restrictions that we had from our previous agency, I think, which was a 9-month period. It was sort of a bit of a blessing in disguise because it just forces you really to take a fresh look at the market, look at which new clients you can win, where the business is, following old contacts from years ago into new places, and I guess get back to the sort of old school business development and sort of think about where's the first deal coming from and first placement, and then the second, and going from there.
One of the other things is that I guess over time, as we got busier and busier, and as our business grew, we've recently brought on a couple of consultants. We just found that Ryan and I, our time was getting sucked up into doing tasks that were important but weren't core to us sort of running the business. So even things like the bookkeeping side, or it might be marketing, or there's a million and one different things that surround, I guess, running the business. So for us, it was more just identifying which one of those we can handball and outsource to a third party or to a partner, and where our time kind of needed to be focused. So because at the start it was that sort of first 6-12 months, like it was, we were the lawyers, we were the accountants, we were doing kind of everything and anything and everything. And now in the last, as we've grown, we've started to say, right, these people are doing that, they're doing that. We've got these guys on a retainer here. These people are doing this for us. So, which has been invaluable.
Yeah, great. So I guess the next question it leads into, and I sort of alluded to it right at the start about how you've been a great consultant, but now you're going to be a business owner, and it's really this big word of cash flow. And a lot of people new to business ownership really don't have any idea what cash flow is. So how important is it to understand cash flow management? And I guess understanding what the true cost of running an agency is, which is your taxation, your own costs, how long it takes to get paid, are your own costs the same across states, that sort of thing. So the question is, cash flow management, how important is it?
Look, Peter, I think it's more important than anything else. I think it's so important to at least have an understanding of your P&L, your balance sheet, and obviously your cash flow statement. Not sort of being able to look at those statements and understand what they are and what they mean is a problem. I think you really need to know your numbers. Also, you need to be constantly chasing your debtors as well, or making sure that you're agreeing to payment terms that are going to be effective for your business, particularly a contract business, because when you're running a payroll and you're funding your own payroll, or in some cases you may or may not be, but it's so important to make sure that you get your clients paying on time. It's easy to see lots of cash flowing into your business and think, oh wow, this is great, I've got lots of money coming in, but taking into consideration what those on costs are, what the statutory costs are, and making sure that you're making allowances for when they need to be paid to the different industry bodies and those sorts of things is really important too.
Yeah, it's, one of the things that when we signed with a payrolling partner, or someone that's going to effectively bankroll your contractor book, and you are signing your life away as a director's guarantee, if the debt goes bad, that it's your neck on the chopping block. I think it makes you be a little, you're more picky where your clients and where your business is coming from. So we've had a few instances where we've had businesses reach out for us to place contractors with them, and we've actually just said no to that off the basis of, we didn't really think that was where we wanted to place contractors. So we've been a little bit picky in that regard as well, in terms of cash flow and, not incurring any bad debt. The other part of advice was when we did catch up with some industry mentors and some people that were putting that money aside religiously whenever invoices are paid, just, a percentage of that, and it could be, 30+%, 30-40% of any revenue that's coming in is automatically dumped into a different sort of bucket, I guess, for taxation, sort of GST and BAS and all that sort of stuff. So just something we do religiously.
Yeah, and I think even that conservative approach has allowed us to just have that buffer, which is really critical when you're starting up. You've got money in the bank, and it's allowed us to do things like hire extra headcount with things like obviously salary and commission, paying out commission to new consultants become a factor. So it's allowed us to sort of grow as a result, having a little bit more of a conservative approach savings wise in the first couple of years.
It's a good point you made, Michael, there. Peter, I know we spoke recently, and when I was in financial services, I was providing advice to a business owner who kind of inherited a contractor book and a perm placement business I say inherited because he got it for a steal. And the advice I was giving him was very similar to what you and I believe in, is just focus on marrying up contractors with, or candidates with clients, and just focus on that. This person had a contractor book of about 30 to 35 people, had good perm in the business, but was more focused on all the things that didn't add value in the market, and subsequently was out of business in 9 months. Spent everything he had, was gone. declared bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So, so the key takeaway here, guys, cash flow, right? Just learn it, understand it, be an absolute expert at it, and you'll be in much better stead. So I guess the next question is, you know, COVID related. There seems to be a lot more people moving into the contracting space. So how do you win your clients, and how do you keep them coming back? How do you keep them happy? So, and particularly throughout the COVID pandemic, did you do anything different that you know, might have increased your loyalty?
I think that everyone who works in the recruitment space understands that relationships are key to any successful desk or recruitment business. For me, throughout the pandemic, I just really made sure that I kept in touch with those clients that I work closely with, and, you know, made sure that I understood what they were going through, how the pandemic was impacting their business, offered any, you know, advice on where I could help, or, you know, make sure that I was in touch with all of their contractors. And yeah, you know, relationships. When I started my business, I had a couple of clients who supported me and worked with me exclusively and really helped me to establish my business. And I just make sure that I give them exceptional service all the time, and they keep coming back. So I think service and relationships is probably so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And certainly, you know, our network is really based on our, you know, our service and our ability to deliver. It all sort of went out the window around March last year when COVID hit, and we probably lost around 70 to 80% of our contractor book almost overnight, and pretty much our overall pipeline as well. So it did hit us hard. So it forces you to think about how do we get back up there, how do we recover? And I think it forces you to be creative as well, because, you know, when you go from X amount of contractors and that reduces overnight, you think, okay, well, how are we going to get it back up? So I think we found out some pockets of the industry and sort of online retail, various sort of customers that were thriving through COVID and hiring. So I guess our approach was really to find out how we could partner with those sort of companies. One of them we didn't have a relationship with, but we were able to strike it up through a third party who was on, I think, a statement of work panel. Yeah. We had some people who were on that panel that we knew, and we were able to strike a partnership with them, and ended up, I think, placing around 10 contractors over a few months, sort of during the middle of last year, which it was obviously valuable to our business. But also, things like, you know, not being really transactional and trying to just, you know, push the next placement. You know, offering different career advice, you know, doing free introductions with candidates that are struggling with clients, and not just being that sort of, you know, demanding recruiter that's aching for the next deal.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the thing, that when COVID, there were so many people that were struggling and out of work and not doing everything. I guess recruiters can be, you know, we're financially incentivized for the most part, so everyone's kind of acting with a deal in mind and money in mind. But I think when you take a step back from that a little bit, and especially in COVID times when, again, people are doing it tough, and anything you can to make direct intros, not for a fee, but seeing who you know, who you can link up with other people, and it all kind of, it's all good karma, and it all comes back around eventually. You know, if you're seen as someone that is a trusted person in that sort of industry and doing what you can to, you know, help facilitate intros where you can. It doesn't always have to be about a placement fee. It's nice when it is, but it's it all comes out in the wash kind of eventually, and it comes back through referrals the other way, you know. So just keeping that in mind kind of helped us get through, which you kind of do. I think any good recruiter probably does that naturally anyway. So, and then how do you keep them coming back? Like Kim nailed it. It's service and delivery. You know, you could have a great relationship with someone, and, you know, they're awesome to catch up with, but if you can't deliver the goods and fill their role, and, you know, you keep missing the brief, then, you know, I think that relationship will die pretty quickly when you're not filling their briefs, or someone else will start filling them for them. So yeah, delivery is critical.
It's actually quite refreshing to hear that, Pete, when, you know, with everybody trying to automate and digitize the world, how the basics are still so important. The relationships and the people side, and the delivery and the trust.
The the more things change, the more they stay the same, eh? I guess it's all about don't waste a good crisis as well on that note. But I guess this is probably more of a subjective question because every consultant and every agency's got their own strategy. But what's led to more success for you guys? So has it been client-led or been candidate-led in this sort of in the short-term market? Kim, starting with you.
I think I'm definitely more client-led. I think if you have, good relationships and you service your clients well, that the work naturally flows on from there. But it's equally as important to make sure that you're building your candidate network all the time and making sure that you're keeping on top of your candidates as well. In the space that I work in, my candidates are often my clients and vice versa. So I don't really, focus on one more than the other, but I do feel like the majority of the work that I do comes from the client relationships.
Yeah. It's a weird one in tech and in IT where I think we've been candidate short. I've been in recruitment since 2009. That was the tail end of the GFC when it was candidate rich and job short. And then the only other time that it's been that way in terms of no jobs and heaps of candidates was probably for like a
couple of months,
a 3-month period between March and May last year, and it was candidate rich and job short. And then since mid last year, it's been back to being super tough to find candidates. I guess we are, clients would come to us because we know that pocket of the market, but it still means that it doesn't mean that we're not client focused as well, would you say?
There's certainly demand from clients, but I think now, given the shortage, it is really driven by the candidates and be able to find those candidates and then service them with a few options. Otherwise, someone else will snap them up. Definitely.
Which obviously lends itself well to being a real expert in your vertical, right?
Yeah. But and then on the client side, you're still keeping in touch with clients and fostering those relationships, and that's pretty much your best. I mean, there's a bunch of people listening in that know that when a contact leaves a company and goes and joins another company, for the most part, they bring you. If you've delivered for them, they'll take you with them into their new business as well. So if the delivery is there and you're keeping in touch with the clients and looking after them, then they'll bring you into wherever they're going next.
Hey, I guess one other thing, I mean, as agency founders, I certainly know from myself from getting caught up and being the CEO of absolutely everything, how has technology changed and how has technology and your use of your tech vendors helped you to focus on growing your agency?
For me, I mean, it's so important, I think, to focus on what you're good at and to outsource where you can. And technology for me plays a big part because I work on my own and I don't employ anyone. So I use Encore, as I said before, for my payroll compliance, but my contractors use the Encore timesheet portal. I use JobAdder because I find it to be probably one of the simplest and most effective recruitment software packages that I've come across in my career. I have good accounting software. I use Xero. So that just makes sure that everything kind of happens quite seamlessly. And using all of those sorts of technologies just mean that I can focus on going out and doing recruitment, which is how you make the money.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the beauty of starting at your own agency is you sort of start with a clean slate and get to pick and choose what you use. I mean, at our previous agent, we were sort of at the whim of whatever the big sort of parent company went with in terms of their database, and the financials.
Had ResMan. It's not ResMan.
I don't even know what ResMan is, but I think we're the only user of ResMan. But yeah, so being able to start clean slate, being able to compare the products, look at, I guess what best suits our business, looking at things like cost, accessibility, etc., and that goes through our database with JobAdder, through payrolling companies with Encore, also just setting up our own website, financials through Xero, etc., etc. So I think, yeah, it's just being the beauty of, I guess, a tech-led world, enabled us to choose what was best for us at the best price as well.
And then there's other things that we use, like obviously Trello and then Slack, which all of our customers and all of our clients are using day to day. So we've taken a little bit of that in terms of utilising yeah, be it Miro or Trello or Slack, whatever it is for different things, which we've found really helpful for us, collaboration perspective.
Yeah, great. Hey, and I guess there's probably a lot of people on this call as well wondering, you know, who's your first hire? So you've started your business, you've made a start, you're cracking into it. Who's your first hire, and when is it right to go out and hire that person?
So for me, I'm 3 years into my business and I haven't hired anyone to work for me directly yet. I've hired lots of contractors and consultants, but not any direct employees. And that's probably for a couple of reasons. I think, you know, my business has sort of afforded me a flexible kind of working lifestyle. I wouldn't say it's a lifestyle business, but it means that, because I still work really hard, but it means that I can work on my terms and work the hours that I want to work. I do want to grow my business, and I think the first hire for me would be another salesperson who can do what I do and you know, basically recreate what I do. So I'd like to hire at least 1 or 2 of those this year, ideally. I was planning to do it last year, but the pandemic hit. So
yeah, we've it's an easy one for us. Our first hire was my wife and better half Kyla, so it was pretty hard for her to say no, because
keep it in the family.
Yeah, keep it in the family. But Kyla had a really successful career. She was with the Davidson guys and one of their sort of top billers. So it was, yeah, I guess always a loose plan of ours, sort of going into business together. But yeah, that was a pretty easy hire for us. But we have brought on a couple of guys more recently as well.
Yeah, I mean, consultants are key for growth and revenue. So we've hired another principal consultant, Jack, and recently another consultant who's a bit more junior, Sam. But we are at the point where we're thinking maybe the next time might be more in that resourcing space, just to give us support with the amount of roles that we have on at the moment.
Yeah.
And then potentially sort of maybe an office manager / admin person, just for more of the operational duties that are becoming quite consuming at the moment
for us.
Yeah, right. But I guess it doesn't matter who you listen to, whether it's sort of Greg Savage or Nigel Haas or any of these other industry experts. They always sort of have a similar point, which is always run your agency like you're planning to sell it. So what does that mean for you guys in terms of an exit strategy?
Oh, tough one. We're only 2 years in, mate. Not even 2 yet.
We want out.
Perm, how about you?
We've thought about it. So.
Yeah, sorry. When I started my business, I had a clear exit strategy in mind. I'd spoken to a couple of people that work in the M&A space and you know, got some advice around what a saleable business should look like. Because I don't want to be doing recruitment into my 50s and 60s. So I wanted to make sure that I was setting myself up effectively for an eventual sale. So, you know, thinking about putting robust processes in place, making sure that you've got your numbers right, thinking about, you know, how big your contractor book needs to be to get it to a point where it's saleable, and making sure that, you know, there is actually a functioning business in place to sell when you're ready to get out of it. So for me, that means obviously to hire salespeople and building on the contractor book. But yeah, it's certainly a consideration at the outset.
Yeah, I joke off the top, but yeah, we're sort of at the stage where we actually just did a session with a more a scaling up kind of growth strategic session to help us coach us to build that over the next few years. And you know, it's that end goal in mind. And to your point, Kim, absolutely, like the valuation of, you know, a bit of research around how businesses are evaluated and that sort of recurring revenue, and having that strong contractor book. Obviously, it's going to be a stronger number when we do eventually get to that point where we want to exit. So there's absolutely a focus around, you know, around the contracting side as well, and that recurring revenue. And then a bunch of other stuff just around making sure that, you know, from a database perspective, that you've got some valuable data in there, and you're, you know, making sure that you've got something of value to offer a potential customer in, you know, however many years.
Damien, you've been around plenty of acquisitions as well. Do you got any advice on that for a founder?
Yeah, it's really around what are people buying? You know, if they're buying a perm book and really it's yourself, and if you want to exit, well, what's the multiple they're going to pay on that versus the annuity and the recurring income and contracts associated with a contractor book? You know, they can be 3 to 4 times higher than what you would pay for a perm book. And there's public knowledge out there, so you know it's not right, but it really gets back to what sort of business are you building, and is there an exit strategy, as you said? Is it a lifestyle business? And if it is a lifestyle business, there could also be an exit strategy where you can divest it. Doesn't mean you can't have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, so it's been a pretty wacky year. Not as crazy as last year, but still pretty crazy so far. What are your guys' predictions for the rest of the year, and you know, what are some good survival tips?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I've certainly noticed that the market's shifting and picking up, and a lot of my clients are starting to think about strategies around how they adapt to what's happened with the pandemic, and you know, whether that might mean cost cutting or it might mean improving processes or reorganizing, those sorts of things. So you know, for me, it's about making sure that I'm with them and that I'm working with them to understand them and support them, and making sure that I'm front of mind when they're ready to start hiring, or you know, to whatever it is they're trying to achieve. But it's certainly shifting, and shifting in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Kim. We're certainly seeing that demand from clients. I think it's pretty much at pre-COVID levels for us in terms of clients needing talent. So I think the scramble for talent will just increase this year.
Yeah.
So being that partner with your clients, being able to continue quality delivery. I think flexibility and working from home has been pretty sort of in the top 5 even pre-COVID, but now I think it's just really the central thing for a lot of candidates, especially in tech. I mean, software engineers never really like going to the office at the best of times, and now they don't really want to come back. So it's really being able to adapt, and I'm getting a lot of candidates that are really prioritising remote first jobs where they don't have to go into the office. So it's opening up a whole new world of interstate, overseas, you know, candidate base, but also, clients that aren't being able to adapt or react to that are also probably missing out on talent as well.
Yeah, and there's no one coming. There's no, in terms of the migration from, you know, the Americas and Europe and Asia and India and these countries, where typically you'd see a lot of new candidates coming to market, which, you know, you'd inevitably place with your clients. That whole pool's kind of dried up. So now the scrambles is in tech, and speaking specifically about our area, it's as sort of tight as it's ever been. So I think businesses now need to really bed down their EVP and, you know, their pitch to why you know, they might be a better option over, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that a candidate might be considering in our space anyway. So it's as competitive as we've seen it.
Wow, it's interesting, eh? Yeah. Hey, just we've just hit 40 minutes. I guess today's been really insightful. Some key takeaways from where I sit, anyways. Kim, your comment about treat contractors as employees is an absolute belter. A recurring theme has been get great advice and shop around for it. And also cash flow management. When it comes to cash flow management, don't be good at it, be great at it. It's absolutely critical to running your business. Damien, you got any other comments, mate?
Yeah, I think that last segment then is really quite interesting, because for those that, you know, you mentioned Nigel before. Nigel was in the industry I started in the late 80s. And Nigel was around the same. And I know one of the things that Nigel often talks about is the supply and demand curve. And we're seeing it now in the market, as the team just mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, that's a real opportunity for this industry. But there's the opportunity is there only if you can have that, you know, how can you be different and better than anybody else? And margins should go up and day rates should go up, which is great for the recruitment industry as a whole. But I guess one of the things I wanted to ask the team is, you know, when you're looking at how you can be different and better than anybody else and how you can have a competitive advantage, we don't need the trade secrets, but what was the process you went through when you started your business?
I remember sitting down. Sorry, I remember sitting down and really trying to think about that, Damien. I remember sitting down and writing, what is my USP and how am I going to be different and what am I going to do? Because as we know, I'm not sure if it's the same in New Zealand, but in Melbourne, in Australia, it's a very crowded market. So finding your point of difference is really important. But I think what's worked for me is just really partnering with your clients and continuing to build on the relationships. It's just a no-brainer. If you really understand what they're doing and you really deliver, it gets back to that service and delivery point. Then they'll come back to you, and that's your point of difference, really.
The trusted advisor.
We had a couple sort of small things that we thought differentiated us from competitors in the market, which kind of tied into the brand name, and that was sort of centered around continual improvement and continual learning, which is critical to the space that we operate in tech and with specifically software engineers. So we struck up some agreements with conferences when they're allowed to function, sort of early days, but tech conferences and online training courses. So we'd offered a percentage of the placement fee to go towards the specific candidates' continual learning. So courses like a Cloud Guru or Udemy Front-End Masters. So giving back to the candidates to get them sort of contribute to their upskilling, which again sort of tied back into the brand of continuing to iterate on yourself. So a few things like that we're continuing to evolve on as well in terms of how we sort of stand out, as you say, in a pretty competitive and crowded space.
And with the skill shortages, of course, I know there's been a lot of talk about, can we brain drain New Zealand? So I think the immigration consultants are just chomping at the bit for the borders to open up again, bring people in.
Yeah, well, funny enough, just to the boys' point before, I actually come across a New Zealand agency earlier this week who have placed 2 candidates from Malaysia working 100% remote, and suddenly it's like that's a whole new ball game in terms of compliance and understanding, their potential risk.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show companies are desperate; they need the talent. If you're working from wherever, it doesn't really matter. So that again opens up a whole new opportunity. All right, just noticed there hasn't been too many questions coming through. One question actually that I was quite curious about, and this is probably more for you, Damien, is there such thing as an average margin? If you're starting out and you haven't done much contracting, what should you really be looking at in terms of gross margins?
Yeah, look, I suppose there's historical margins, and then you've got, I know across the people that we service, it's great to see that people are upholding their value and really standing up to clients about the professionalism and the value that they offer in the market, and what the industry does as well. We're averaging around, our contractor books are averaging around 15 to 20%, which is great. I know in some of those volume plays, they're down as low as 7%, certainly from some of the organisations that Kimberly, Michael and Ryan have worked for, they're very low. So that's around where we see the market at. I know that Nigel Haas also produces some statistics on margins as well, but around the 15.5 to 17% is kind of where it's at, which is great. And I think that's one of the challenges for the industry is from a client perspective, is some of these panels is how do the clients create an efficient market and get a panel arrangement? Because as we know, a lot of the larger, it makes sense to have a panel, but not a panel of 130, a panel of 9 or 10. And what does that look like and that's where the whole industry's got to work together. And it's not collusion, it's just standing up for the value that the recruitment industry offers.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I just had a question through. If the new industrial law comes in about only employing contractors or temps for 6 months before they should be offered perm, how do you plan to get around this?
I would say wait until the new industrial law comes into play.
And it's
Yeah.
to my knowledge as well, it's typically at sort of award level wages and around about, like we've probably run into that less because the people that we're sort of placing in software engineering as the candidates themselves are anywhere from $600, $700, $800 to $1,000 a day contractors. So yeah, again, it's a question for the lawyers, for our employment lawyers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
sure.
And it's a question for the politicians as well. And you know, if they want to, you know, one of the great things about flexibility is it enables productivity and enables us to compete in the global market. So if that comes into play, it could really hurt this economy.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, just another question about margins. Just come through. You know, Damien, maybe could you expand a little bit when we're talking about margins, also what the actual costs are as part of that margin that eat away the margin? What are the costs and what does the real revenue look like in that margin?
Well, that's a net margin I'm talking about there, that 15%. So, you know, that's post all contractor rates, superannuation, payroll tax, work cover insurance, any other employee or contractor entitlements, employee entitlements that we see in the temp market, whether they're permanent, part-time, or casual. So that is a net margin.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. There is one there that's probably not specifically here, and we'll address that after this. Any other closing comments, guys, before we sign off?
Well, thanks for the opportunity of having a chat. It's been great.
Thanks for having us, guys.
No,
Yeah,
I think it's great to hear for some people that are actually have gone into business over the last 3 or 4 years, Pete. You know, I know there's people out there. This is what you do when you go into business, but there's a big difference between the late 80s and the early 90s and today. So some things don't change, but others have. So it's great to hear the stories.
Yeah. Hey, thanks guys for coming along and participating today. It's been great. There is a recording available, and all the participants will get sent a recording of that. And if you've got any questions for any of us, mate, our details are on the email, so feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Well done, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
See you, mate.
See you guys.
Bye.